Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to the 50th edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Of course, tonight we'll be talking a lot about the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, and of course the Tulane Green Wave. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and we've got a great panel for you. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. And guys, I can't believe 50 episodes of this show already. Thanks for being part of it.
Hey, you know, an honor. I didn't know this was going to be such a joyous occasion there.
Well, we got some champagne. We've got a big cake that's in the back that'll be coming out. Dancing girls will join us at the end of the program.
I knew I was in for a good surprise tonight.
Yes, and it's not the Sensations.
Okay.
It's a couple strippers from Brevis Street.
Nice. Well, you know we're local guys, so
exactly.
There you go.
No doubt. Guys, I tell you what, first of all, we'll jump into the New Orleans Saints. 866-3200 is the number if you'd like to get involved in the program. And I got to tell you, I didn't know what to expect going into St. Louis. Obviously, not having a chance to see the team kind of living through you guys that had a chance to be able to be in West Virginia. But I was pleasantly surprised with again, the play of the team, especially along the offensive line, the interior of the offensive line. Garland, we'll start with you first. Again, before we kind of get into St. Louis, if you would, tell the folks a little bit about what's going on at Fox 8 Sports. And you guys are covering things wall to wall.
Yeah, and tomorrow night, the Saints play the Titans on Fox 8. We've got a 4 to 6. We have newscasts. Pre-game show from 6 to 7. Fred Hickman, Chad Sabity, Sean Fazan, and myself. We'll get you right up till kickoff, and then you can watch the game. And then post-game reaction, we'll have Sean Payton, all those guys on the podium, analysis. So we got a big day tomorrow.
Yeah.
Sean Fazan got in at 5 a.m. this morning from West Virginia. I got back in on late Saturday night. So we're all back in New Orleans. We're ready to go for a home opener tomorrow night.
And Glenn Guilbeau, again, welcome to the program. And you're with Gannett News. And one of the great things about Gannett News now, you guys have a little bit of a partnership with Channel 4 Television, so folks can catch your writings on their website, right?
Right. My LSU coverage is on WWLTV.com, and Lyons Gillen, who covers the Saints for WWL-TV, is also on all the Gannett, Louisiana websites. He was at the Saints camp every day. So we have more LSU and Saints coverage at the same time than we've ever had before. And you can get the LSU at LSUbeat.com and Saints at WWLTV.com and theadvertiser.com.
Sounds great. Garland, what about the Saints as they took on the St. Louis Rams? One of the first things that as I noticed that really kind of stuck out to me was the interior offensive line. The backups played very, very well. Yeah,
I was a little worried with the offensive line with Ben Grubbs being out and Jari Evans being out. At least Grubbs is back this week. That's a huge step for that offensive line. The running backs, they're going to make anybody look good right now. Mark Ingram looked fantastic in that game. Travaris Cadet. Pierre Thomas wasn't at that game, but he was back at practice, which is a good note for the Saints. 4 running backs are going to make the rosters, no doubt about that. Tim Flanders has been injured, hasn't really shown us anything fantastic in camp. Derek Stroh's from Tulane, I think he might make the practice squad for the running backs. But obviously you asked about the linemen. Yeah, Marcel Jones, he's going to make the roster. In the middle is the only battle left, really. I mean, Paris Harrelson, Victor Butler battle is over with because Victor's been hurt. The kicker battle, I think Shane Graham has the leg up. But right now, the center battle between Tim Lolito and Jonathan Goodwin, that might go down to game 4. That is the big battle that I'm still watching. And from your own eyes, you really can't tell who's winning that battle. That's a tough one. That's got to be the eye in the sky. Sean Payton and them on the coach's cameras really telling you. I can't tell you who's leading the center battle. It's just too tough. But they gave the guys great protection. Luke McCown and Ryan Griffin had good protection on the line, and they blocked well.
You know, one of the guys that really stuck out to me, actually 2, you mentioned Marcel Jones, Sergio Clemente. A big kid who's been on the roster now throughout the offseason. We kind of talked a little bit about him, not really knowing a lot about him. He came in and played very, very well.
Yeah, and I think he's definitely going to make the roster now. Bryce Harris will probably be that 8th guy to make the roster of the offensive lineman. Hadn't shown us a lot in camp, but he can move around the line, so he has a lot of experience. But they need to protect obviously Drew Brees, and I think they will. They have a good crew. We don't know what's wrong with Jari Evans right now. Sean Payton's very secretive with injuries, which he should be. First week of the regular season on Wednesday against the Falcons, the first time we'll get a real injury report. So hopefully Jari Evans can be back next week. And number 9, it all starts and ends with number 9. He's not going to play this week. Maybe next week in Indianapolis will hopefully be his first start for them.
Can Goodwin move to guard?
He actually started at guard last week in the preseason game. So he played a little guard. And remember, something I had forgotten, Glenn, when he first came to the Saints, he came to the Saints as a guard.
Right.
And, of course, they converted him back to the center position. And, of course, the rest is history. He's been playing at that position ever since. But, I'm encouraged. I thought that would be one of the weaker links of this team going into this season. And just off one preseason game, and, again, it's just a small litmus test, but going against a pretty good defensive line in St. Louis, I thought they performed pretty well. And again, despite the injuries, you didn't see Grubbs, you didn't see Evans. Obviously the 2 tackles were there, Armstead and Streiff, but you had some mixing and matching on the interior of the line. And I thought, to me, that's the thing that stuck out to me the most and was the most encouraging thing about the St. Louis game.
Yeah, and going into the camp, I got the feeling they wanted Lolito to win the center job, and Goodwin, that's going to be some great depth at center and guard. And I thought Kerry Robinson looked pretty good too in the game.
No, he did. And I'll say another thing. Year 2 of Brett Ingles with his zone blocking scheme. Again, we saw kind of growing pains in the early first 3 quarters of last season. We really started to see this kind of take effect in the last quarter of the season, and it kind of coincided with Mark Ingram playing much better. You can see now the zone blocking scheme, everybody seems to be comfortable with it. The running backs are comfortable with it, and obviously the linemen are comfortable with it as well.
Yeah, and the tight ends too. Josh Hill and Benjamin Watson, they're going to make the roster because not only can they catch the ball, but they can block. I understand why the Saints didn't sign the 5th-year extension on Mark Ingram because the value is just not there when you're paying Kyrie Robinson under $1 million. You restructure Pierre Thomas's contract. You're not paying Travaris Cadet a lot of money. So I don't think Ingram, unless Ingram blows, has a fantastic season, he's not going to get that $4 to $5 million that he was going to get if he got that extension. He's going to prove it on the field this year. I think he's going to have a great season, but I don't know if he's going to get the kind of money that he thought he was going to get because running backs just don't get that kind of money anymore.
No, Glenn, as you know, there's a short life expectancy in the NFL when it comes to running backs.
And Sean Payton has just used running backs so interchangeably. He can mix and match them, and I think Kerry Robinson's going to be the guy this year.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, I got to say, I'm impressed with Mark Ingram. I've never been a real big fan. Doesn't have great vision. Hasn't been a guy that's broke a lot of tackles. But I think they're utilizing him a little bit different. I go back to the last quarter of the season. They used him a little bit more off tackle. We saw a lot of that in the St. Louis game. They're not asking him to go through the middle of the line and try to find that cutback hole. He seems to be a little bit more patience. And the one thing we saw in the St. Louis game, a little bit better vision, but the ability to break tackles, something we haven't seen a lot of.
Yeah, Ingram, I know he's had his injury concerns, and he's possibly one of the whipping boys of the Saints fans there. He's had a rough time up and down. Cowboys game last year, I know the Cowboys defense was atrocious last year, but in the playoffs against the Eagles, he really showed why the Saints put him in the first round. Another thing to watch is that all 4 of the running backs who make the roster can all catch screen passes now. They did it a lot in camp. Robinson, a lot of screen passes in camp. Mark Ingram's got a lot of screen passes.
Let me ask you about Ingram because he's had a problem in catching the ball. In the
they've
past.
been using him a lot at West Virginia with screen passes because when Pierre Thomas gets in the game, that almost sometimes telegraphs that's what he's going to do. Is he going to get a screen out of the backfield? But all 4 of the guys can do it. Travaris Cadet can catch the ball out of the backfield. Ingram and Robinson and Ingram one of the others. But I think that all of them can catch screens. That's going to be something to watch for this fall.
866-3200. This is a live show here on WLE on this Thursday night. Let's go to Don in New Orleans East. Don, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, Eric.
Hey, Don.
And I want to say hi to you guests. Look, I had a question. Y'all been talking about offense, but when we look at the defense, I understand Jairus Byrd, may be held out, this game also. And, based on Tiger Woods saying that he needed to improve the strength, of his back and all, do you guys think that he's going to appear sooner than later? And I'll hang up and listen.
Don, thank you for the phone call. Well, I tell you what, that is kind of the biggest question mark of camp so far. Coming off that surgery, and again, I want to harken back, same surgery Tiger Woods had. Tiger's struggling right now in terms of getting back. He's not propelling his body into opposing players. It is a little bit scary for Saints fans who expect this guy to be on the field week 1 against Atlanta. I'm guessing they're going to hold him out as long as they can and just get him ready for game 1, right?
One of the biggest questions I got to ask before training camp started, what was I watching? I said I want to see Jairus Byrd on the field at the first practice. Well, right now he's on the field, but he only does 7-on-7 non-contact. He has not practiced one day yet, 11-on-11 full contact. That is a tricky situation with his back. We just don't know when he's actually going to get out there and actually take contact because he hasn't done it yet.
Your thoughts on Byrd?
And there seems to be so much mystery about the injuries this year, because Champ Bailey, he hasn't done much either, has he?
No.
And of course, Drew Brees, we know what the injury is, the oblique, but he's probably not going to do much either. So it's going to, that first regular season game is going to be interesting. We'll see who can actually play, if they're still on the team, who's healthy. With Bailey, there's been rumors he might not even make it to that game, but. Yeah, I'm disappointed that Jairus Byrd hasn't done anything yet. And, I think training camp is overrated a lot, but you got to do a little bit before the opener.
No, especially if you're going to be the guy making the calls in the defensive backfield. There's got to be some continuity there. Mm-hmm. And right now, we understand through obviously through the guys that are out there reporting, at least what we've been told by the Saints staff is that he's been very, very vocal and active and getting in the meetings in terms of getting things together. But that's a whole different animal than, obviously being in a live game.
Yeah, and Raphael Bush has had a great camp. His backup right now. I mean, right now it's Vaccaro and Raphael Bush. And then you got Vinny Sunseri and Marcus Ball and Pierre Warren behind them. Most of those guys are going to make the roster just because Jairus Byrd, can we say he's ready for game 1? I can't say that right now.
Right.
And this isn't college football where you play Sam Houston State in the opener.
That's right.
You're playing the Falcons on the road, and they remember what happened last year at the end of the game with the pass breakup and the interception in the end zone. So that's a big question mark with Jairus Byrd. That's something you really, next to Drew Brees, that's your second biggest question right now, injury-wise.
Yeah, and again, Glenn mentioned Champ Bailey. I mean, he got a little on the field a little bit. Well, I don't know if we're going to see him this week. This may be a situation where you might not see Brees and Bailey until next week's preseason game, where a lot of the starters get a couple of quarters in, maybe almost, maybe 2.5, 3 quarters in, to be able to kind of hone their skills, where they're kept out of the last preseason game. It'll be interesting to see what happens there. But they've been so tight-lipped about what's happening with the injuries that you've left everyone that's covering this, the fan base, to kind of assume what's going on.
Yeah, and that's why Sean likes it. He doesn't like to reveal those. And right now, at the other side of cornerback, you have Patrick Robinson out right now. You have Champ Bailey out right now. You have Corey White starting on the opposite side. Stanley Jean-Baptiste is back up, extremely raw. You saw the touchdown he gave up in the Rams game, didn't turn his head around. He's had trouble with that early. I don't think he's going to get too much playing time this year at all. He's more of a developmental project. I wouldn't call it a redshirt year, but he's not going to get a lot of work this year. So you need to get Robinson and Bailey back. Bailey has done some running. He's done some stuff on the side with Scotty Patton, but he hadn't got out there, and we have no idea what's wrong with him. I will say this. When we first asked about what was up with Champ Bailey, they didn't ask him if it was an injury. They just said, "Where's Champ Bailey?" And Sean said that they don't talk about injuries. So that's when we figured out. That's when we figured out it was an actual injury. Because some people leave, for family reasons.
Right, no doubt.
And Sean kind of gave it away that it was an injury. So, but we still have no idea.
Right, and then
he got his lies mixed up.
Yeah.
Right. Well, then it led to speculation of guys going back either through footage or through in their head saying, okay, he got tangled up on this certain play, and maybe that's where he got injured. But again, because they've been so tight-lipped, it's hard to know one way or the other what's going on. I mean, there are some other guys. Eric Lorig, nobody knows what's going on with him. Victor Butler, it was reported he was in a boot. Nobody's seen him. It's almost like anybody that's been involved in an injury, they got him stashed away somewhere in West Virginia, in the mountains of West Virginia, where you can't find him.
Yeah, Eric Lorig he's missed 2 weeks of training camp. Austin Johnson's getting the lion's share of the work right now. Lower will make the roster just because they put a lot of money into him. Unless they're just going to put him on the injury reserve list. Right now we have no idea. We haven't seen Lowerig. We have no idea what he's up to right now.
Right, and that again, we're only a couple weeks out. when it comes to the start of the season. You know, another guy that really impressed me was Josh Hill. I can remember Josh Hill, and Glenn, you may remember this from last year. You know, when he got on the field, you know, I think he ran that reverse, which didn't work.
It's the Jets, 4th and 1.
Oh, come on. And then he had quite a few times where he was open, got the ball thrown to him on time, dropped the pass. He was impressive against the Rams.
Yeah.
He looked like Jimmy Graham. I thought he was a wide receiver.
Yeah, Ryan Griffin, it's his roommate. So, you know, so definitely that he would look for Josh Hill. Yeah, I mean, Drew Brees has Jimmy Graham, and I guess Ryan Griffin has Josh Hill. But second year at Idaho State, he's making the roster. I think Nick Jacobs has had a great camp. He'll get that practice squad. Yeah, I think he's a practice squad guy. Yeah, they got the 3 tight ends locked in. Josh Hill, the yards after the catch was fantastic.
Yeah, really was. And Glenn, you were being a little bit facetious there, but he did. He looked a little bit like Jimmy Graham on some of those plays. And look, when you look at it, 1, 2, 3 deep on this tight end position, they're pretty strong with Ben Watson,
he caught a
Hill,
pass too,
and Graham.
Oh yeah, and you know Graham, I think he's going to have another great season because of Brandon Cooks taking some of the receptions. He might not catch as many passes, but you know probably more yards and just more critical catches. And Cooks has been the star of the camp easily.
Well, who do you double team now? I mean, that's the thing. I mean, now you have to play Jimmy Graham straight up. You may be able to, and if you're going to maybe lean a safety his way or a linebacker his way, all of a sudden you got a gap. And now with Nick Toon kind of coming on, that big receiver that they really haven't had to run those slants. We've talked about Brandon Cooks, and we're going to get into him a little bit more in a few minutes. You look at Stills, who hopefully will come back from his injury. All of a sudden, you throw him out there with Colston. You got a pretty good receiving core, and I don't know if you're a defensive coordinator, how you are going to be able to double any one of these guys, because if you do, you're going to leave that open. And remember, you got some guys coming out the backfield to catch the ball as well.
In cornerback spot, it will not be guarding Jimmy Graham this year. Akeem Talib will not be one of those big-time names. You're right. Brandon Cooks and Kenny Stills are going to open the field wide open. You got to hope Stills. That's another guy that hasn't really got a lot of work this training camp. He pulled up lame first day of practice on a deep bomb play and hasn't practiced since. So Kenny Stills, you expect a lot of him in year 2. But Brandon Cooks. Yeah, Jimmy Graham is going to get all that money back. That if somebody said that he isn't worth it, I don't believe that. I think he is worth every penny, and he's going to prove it this year.
Well, and again, when you start looking at where they are, I mean, to me, offensively, they're making that transition that they made on the defensive side last year. They're getting younger at the skill positions, and again, that bodes well for the future. The only thing that I think we have to kind of watch, especially down with Drew Brees out so long, is that timing with a lot of these young receivers, getting that together. Glenn, your thoughts?
Well, Drew Brees, I think he's going to get that back pretty quick. I'm just worried about if the pain and if how it's going to affect his passing, because like you said, that's his torque, yes. and that just affects everything. So I'm hoping he's okay for the first game, but I'm sure he's going to get his timing back pretty quick.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE TV, with a rebroadcast each and every Friday night on WLAE TV at 10 o'clock, with also a rebroadcast on Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. Stay tuned for more Inside New Orleans Sports.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.
He's inside the 5. He's in. Touchdown.
He's gone from really good to great to dominant to overwhelming.
He was the first young player I'd ever offered.
He became the face of Louisiana football.
Watch Road to Stardom, the Leonard Fournette story, Sunday, August 24th at 9 p.m. and Thursday, August 28th at 8 p.m. Only on WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Tonight on the panel, Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. We're talking a little Saints. We'll get into LSU and Tulane throughout the rest of the program as we go a little bit further along. We talked a little bit about Brandon Cooks. Let's talk about maybe some of the other rookies who maybe have a chance to be able to make this team. I really was impressed with Fort last week. I thought Powell showed some flashes. The guy that really stuck out to me outside of Brandon Cooks was Vinny Cincinnati. Guy's got great range. He's got a nose for the football. Obviously, he's a smart guy. And the guy can hit. You know, you've got a chance to see him at practice. Your thoughts? And Glenn, you can chime in too because you saw him at the University of Alabama.
He was a guy I thought, like you were saying earlier, would be redshirted maybe and be a project this season, but I think he's going to play a lot.
Yeah, the ACL injury that he got in October didn't affect his game at all. He has put the wood on some players this training camp. Not everybody enjoyed it either, but you know, in St. Louis had a strong game. He's going to make it on special teams already. That's definitely going to be his bread and butter at the beginning, because if Jairus Byrd comes back and you got Marcus Ball, and I just think that those kind of guys, and Raphael Bush, that he's going to make the team though. Pierre Warren is on that 53rd, 54, 55 guy, you know, it'd take 53. Right now, he's outside looking in, and if the Saints do cut him, somebody else will pick him up. He is not going to make it through practice squad with the Saints. I think Pierre Warren, that's the biggest, I think, surprise at camp. The guy, we never heard of him, at Jacksonville State.
Sure.
He's killed it during training camp.
You know, and I would agree with you, Garland, and I'll take it a step further. I think, and again, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later on the show, when you look at that Wall Street Journal article in which Rob Ryan was talking about how he's really trying to put the best 11 on the field, and he's not worried about what position they're playing. The lean toward, again, using more safeties, and we saw that last year. I think a guy like Pierre Warren has a chance to make the team, and maybe, you know, you're looking at two quarterbacks. Maybe you're looking at one less receiver. You know, so there's a possibility there that may happen because they utilize the safety position so much.
Yeah, and I definitely think it that way. I know some prognosticators said six wide receivers make it. I think it's 5, and I think Ryan Griffin is the number 2, and you can put those 2 extra spots because you maybe want to bring a few extra linebackers in the mix. And when you got cornerback injury problems, you got safety injury problems right now. I think that's where the guys go. The defensive line, I think, is safe and sound. Yes. I think they got the backups and the starters. I think that's almost locked in. But I think that you're right. I think it's going to be 2 quarterbacks, 5 receivers, just so they can get an extra secondary guy in there.
And wouldn't it be different if a former Alabama player becomes popular with LSU fans? I mean, with Saints fans, for a change.
Well, I'll tell you what.
Well, you got Roman last year. It kind of goes.
Well, I'll tell you what, this guy's got much better range than Roman Harper ever had. I mean, you could see it already. At Alabama, he had a nose for the football. He could catch the ball, something Roman never did well. Now, he's probably not the guy that Roman was in run support, but he's definitely a guy that's got a little bit more range than Roman Harper did, just going off what I was able to see in the St. Louis game and going back to his career at Alabama.
Yeah, and he had some great pick sixes at Alabama. Coach's son, I know that's been well documented. He's going to make this team. Ronald Powell, you talked about earlier. Right now, he's on the bubble.
Right, and he's injured right now, isn't he?
Yeah, and Kyrie Fort. It looks like he will make it because they put him at outside linebacker now after Victor Butler got injured. But yeah, Ronald Powell, he's had injury problems his entire career. I mean, they got him in the 5th round. I mean, if he doesn't pan out, it's not that big of a deal, especially when you hit on a few undrafted free agents.
Yeah, no doubt. Outside of, let's talk a little bit more about Brandon Cooks. What do you think he brings to the table? And Glenn, I would like, again, chime in on this one. A lot of people trying to compare his speed to Reggie Bush's speed. Man, I want to tell you what, just on what I was able to see from him in college and just a little bit, obviously, in the game against St. Louis, the guy looks faster than Bush ever was. I mean, again, I'd love to see those two guys in a foot race, but it is a different kind of speed between the two guys, isn't it?
Well, go ahead.
Oh, no. Brandon Cooks can do everything for him. He's going to play in the slot. He could play out wide. He's going to be a punt returner. He's not going to be the kick returner. Hey, he's good on camera too, interviews. So Reggie and Brandon Cooks, you can see a little similarities there, but I just think, I mean, you could see also Brandon play out of the backfield too, the kind of reverse sweep there. But at least they spent a little less money on Brandon Cooks than they did on Reggie Bush. Right. But right now, between him and Johnny Manziel, I think you're looking at offensive rookie there between those two guys.
Right.
And Brandon Cooks, he could be a diva, but he's not a diva, like Reggie Bush was. And Brandon's not just a deep receiver. He's a guy that knows how to get open. He's kind of got that possession receiver quality. Not that he's anything like a possession receiver, but he just knows how to get open in the intermediate areas of the field. And I don't think he's going to do as much running as people think. I mean, I think Cadet is going to take up the Sproles role, but you are going to see Cooks doing some end arounds, I think.
Remember, Henderson did a lot lot of that when he was with the Saints, even as a decoy, to move to be, again, to dictate where that safety or that linebacker was going to be. They utilized him a lot. I'm going to be interested to see where he is. One of the great things about Reggie Bush with this team was, I always mused that, from 10 yards out to the pylon, I don't think there was anybody faster in the NFL to get to that pylon. I'll be interested to see how Cook stacks up against that. We saw a little bit of that against St. Louis.
Yeah, that touchdown catch he had, the movement he made in the middle, and the hit that Ryan Griffin took to deliver that on time, that was a great combination right there. Brandon Cooks is going to play. I know before training camp started, I told a radio guy at Shreveport that he was going to play from day one. The person was a little surprised, but I knew that the talent was there, and punt returns, his speed. He broke one during the black and gold scrimmage. I think Brandon Cooks is going to be a big star for the New Orleans Saints going forward.
When you look at the wide receiver position, who do you think makes this team?
Fifth spot right now, I would have to give it to Joe Morgan, just on potential possibly alone. Robert Meacham, this might be his last year, because Toone's got the 4. Andy Tanner's done. Maybe on practice squad, I keep Shontavious Jones. Right. Brandon Coleman's been has not delivered during training camp. There's a reason why everybody passed on him.
Sure. Glenn, anything you can add?
I thought Toone might be in danger, but he's had a really good camp.
Yes, he really has, and he looked pretty good against St. Louis. And when you listen to Sean Payton talk about Nick Toone, one of the things that he talked about is that he played pretty well last season in training camp. He looked pretty good in practice. It's just really the Jet game really just kind of destroyed everything for him.
Everybody goes back to the Jets game. You know how many catches he had last year? 4. I did a story on him recently at camp. He had 4 catches last year. I think this is it for him. If he doesn't deliver this year, sayonara. Right. This is the end of the road. Maybe that's when Shontavious Jones comes off the practice squad toward the end of the year, maybe. But it's over with for him. Andy Tanner has no years left on the practice squad, so Andy Tanner's done. He's been injured most of the camp anyway.
And he may be able to catch on elsewhere, depending on what's going to happen out there. Let's talk a little bit about Rob Ryan and his best 11 with maybe an emphasis on the safety position. I really thought it was an excellent article. We talked a little bit about it on this show last week in the Wall Street Journal. You've seen this defense, how it's kind of evolved. Now this is year 2. Guys are reacting. They're not having to think in this defense. We were all kind of amazed a little bit last year about the utilization of the safety position, something we hadn't seen here in New Orleans, that many safeties. But he's got the tools in the tool chest to be able to get that done. There's an abundance of talent at the safety position.
That's why I think they're a Super Bowl threat this year, just because of the defense. The offense is going to be there. But he can make a star out of a lot of guys on that team. I mean, Cameron Jordan and Junior Gillette, they have 24.5 sacks between the two of them. That's amazing. Marcus Ball, Vinny Sinceri, those guys are going to make some big plays this year coming out. Jarris Byrd, there's a reason why he came here. Is he knew that he was going to first off get paid a lot of money, and that he saw what Rob Ryan did. I mean, last year Victor Butt, we all laughed at him. He said worst to first, 32 to number 4 defense last year. And this year, I find no way that they're not in that top 5 again. I don't know if they're number 1. The Seahawks and Niners have fantastic defenses, but they could be in that top 5 again.
Yeah, I mean, that was a surprise last year. I thought there was no way Rob Ryan was going to have any kind of season like they had last season. And the defense is so young. I remember talking to Sean Payton at the end of the season last year, and he was saying this is one of the rare times we can go into a draft and we're not that worried about the defense. And they took Brandon Cooks, It's the first offensive player they've taken in years in the first round, other than that Ingram trade. But the defense just looks good for a couple of years now because they're so young. And, I think they're going to be even better this season than last season, just from getting used to Ryan.
Right, and it starts up front. I mean, that's where the biggest difference in this team is, and as we've talked about for a long time over the last couple of years, they didn't know the young players that they had along the defensive line. These guys kind of emerged because of injuries, and you look at Tyron Walker, you look at Glenn Foster, you look at the emergence of John Jenkins, even Broderick Bunkley, who again has been kind of beaten down by the fan base. He played well. He's doing his job. And then of course you talk about Gillette and Jordan. Those guys, those are legitimate guys you have to worry about on each and every play when it comes to sacking the quarterback.
Yeah, Nakeem Hicks is getting a lot of run this training camp.
How could I forget him?
Yeah. Hicks is going to is expected to have a huge year this year. But yeah, their defensive line, backup defensive line, could rival some starting defensive lines in the NFL. You got Tyron Walker and you got John Jenkins and you got Glenn Foster. They could wreak some havoc, the backup guys. Yeah, Hicks is gonna. He might get a good payday out of this year. I mean, Cameron Jordan's only got, his contract's almost come to an end, so he could definitely make some money.
And I think the key, guys, is going forward is, again, I think they can rush the passer. Victor Butler comes in healthy. That gives them another guy that again, is a true pass rusher. But they got to be able to prove they can stop the run. You know, it's one thing to have all these safeties on the field, especially guys like a Marcus Ball, who's kind of a pseudo linebacker. But at the end of the day, you got to be able to stop the run up front. That comes down to Jenkins, Hicks, and Bunkley. And that's going to be one of the keys this year. You know, a lot of things that we questioned last year was the physicality on this team on both the offensive and defensive lines. I think the defensive line proved they were physical. I think we saw toward the end of the season a little bit more physicality out of the offensive line, but that still is one of the big question marks when they start talking about who are the upper echelon teams in the NFL. Some people still believe that the Saints are soft.
Well, the Seahawks pushed them around, pushed the offense around at the end. But I still think in the NFC, it's either the Seahawks, the Niners, and the Saints. That's going to be your representative in the Super Bowl in Phoenix. I think this team's gotten tougher under Rob Ryan. I think the offensive line's gotten tougher. They got Pro Bowlers on that line. I just think that the running backs, the receivers, they make that offense look good. And I think the safeties coming up. Kenny Vaccaro, we didn't bring up earlier. Mm-hmm. He can wreak some massive havoc, and he's healthy because they missed him in the playoffs last year.
Yes.
They could have maybe made that other step in the playoffs there, but Vaccaro is one of those other guys that's going to definitely help that defense.
And the Saints defense really gave Seattle one of their better games.
Yes, they
in
did.
The playoffs.
In the playoffs, yeah, they really turned it around. Guys, we touched on it just a little bit in the beginning of the show. Drew Brees, obviously out with the oblique injury. How critical is it for him to get out there for Game 3 of the preseason?
Well, he needs to get, I would hope this next week is when we're finally going to see him back at practice. It's taken, I think, too long. I know he's dying to get out there. He's doing ice bucket challenges and anything to kind of keep his motor running right now because he's dying on that sideline. You could tell pre-game against the Rams that this wasn't where he wanted to be in sweatpants and that kind of thing. I think next week will be finally the week comebacks. We only have 2 preseason games left. We got the Colts. Starters never play in the 4th preseason game. It's very rare. I think Drew Brees might get a little extra work in that 4th preseason game against the Ravens.
Well, just hope he doesn't aggravate anything because then it could last all year. So I'd be happy with him just not playing until the opener.
Until the opener, yeah.
Just to be safe.
Yeah, the only thing I'm concerned about is timing with the receivers. That's it.
Yeah, Brandon Cooks,
he hasn't worked with Jimmy Graham much.
Right.
No. The first day of camp, Drew Brees had a fantastic throw and catch to Brandon Cooks, and everybody got really excited. But then since then, yeah, that's another connection that if you're a Saints fan, you want to see more of is Brandon Cooks and Drew Brees, and they haven't really connected in weeks.
Anything you can add to that?
I'm good.
How about to this point? In your opinion, Ryan Griffin's job to lose at this point as the number 2 signal caller?
The one thing that definitely makes me think that this is Ryan Griffin's job, last week, Shane Graham missed the extra point. Ryan Griffin, you would guess it was his fault the way he held the ball. Mm-hmm. Next time out, Thomas Morstead's holding. not Luke McCown, who was the starter last year. It was Thomas Morstead. I saw Morstead in the locker room after. I said, when's the last time you held a snap, extra point field goal? It was never. Never. He said, I just do what they tell me. So that shows you that they didn't want Luke McCown even out there holding on extra points and field goals. That shows you, in my mind, then he's gone. Now, Sean Payton will say that right now it's an even battle right now, but if he's not, usually your backup quarterback is holding on extra points and field goals, and that job is Ryan Griffin and Morstead in week 1. I'll be intrigued to see who's doing it tomorrow night.
That's amazing.
Guys, what are you looking for in preseason game number 2?
Well, we're not going to see Drew Brees. We're not going to see Champ Bailey. So I definitely want to see more from the secondary. Marcus Ball had a fantastic pick in the black and gold scrimmage. Maybe a few of those rookies, Pierre Warren. John Jenkins, I think it's going to be his first work he's going to get. Yeah, so I'm excited to see what John Jenkins has. Offensive line, Ben Grubbs will be his first game back. Yes. I would think he was going to play. But other than that, I mean, the running backs are fine. Brandon Cooks doesn't need to show me anything else. I would like to see what's going to be happening with Joe Morgan and Robert Meacham at that 5th spot.
Yeah.
I'm watching Lolito and Goodwin and Grubbs and Ingram and Kerry Robinson to see if they can continue what they did last week.
Right. Guys, what about the Saints' weaknesses and strengths going into the season for what you've been able to see so far? Garland?
Well, injuries. That's the one thing.
That's the biggest weakness.
I hate to say it, but that's it. Yeah, I just wrote Jarris Byrd not being on the field, I think, is a weakness on this defense right now. Champ Bailey and Patrick Robinson, that was a huge battle. Both those guys are out right now. We're expecting big things out of both those guys this year. And Drew on the other side, I think injuries is the biggest key. Luckily, none of these injuries right now we know are year-enders.
Right.
Eric Lowrig, we have no idea. He's like in the witness protection program right now. He hadn't even come out of the facility building. So, yeah, Lowrig, that's another one that you need to watch. But, yeah, I just think it's injuries right now.
I'm still a little concerned about the offensive line. I think, they could be good, but they just don't seem like they can be great. Whereas the defense, it looks like they have a chance to be great, and they're great at quarterback and receiver and pretty good at running back. So I just need a little step up from the offensive line.
When you stack this team, Glenn, up against the rest of the teams in the NFC, where do you think that they fall? Are they a top 5? They're a top 3? Are they the best team in the NFC? What do you think?
I think they're top 2 or 3 in the NFC for sure. I mean, I think this is a year, if they get these people back, Bird and Bailey and Breeze is okay, I think this is a Super Bowl type season. I mean, second year of Rob Ryan, I think it could happen.
Yeah, I'm definitely with Glenn on that one. AFC, I know this Peyton Manning and that crew's last run, but I think in the NFC, home field advantage is going to be huge this year. If you can get the Seahawks at home or the Niners at home, you can win. I mean, the Saints beat the Niners at home last year, and the Seahawks, they get the Seahawks at home, and it'd be a totally different story than last year.
Biggest question is going to be the question until they answer it. Are they going to be able to match the physicality of those teams out west? San Francisco and Seattle. That's been the biggest question mark. I think they've been able to prove a little bit in week 1 against St. Louis. But again, it is preseason. So again, I think that's still going to be the biggest question mark going into the season. And if they can solve that, look, they ran the football very well last week. And if you can see that consistently out of this team and the ability to stop the run, again, with this team, with the ability to again add the speed they're adding, maybe bringing back a little bit of that shock and awe that we got used to when Peyton first came on board. All of a sudden now, teams have to sort of start playing a little catch up, and then that plays right into the hands of Rob Ryan.
Well, I thought they showed themselves getting more physical toward the end of last season with the running game. What they missed against Seattle was another option after Jimmy Graham, and now they have it with Brandon Cooks. It's amazing to me, the Saints with Drew Brees and Sean Payton, they've never really had a great wide receiver. They've had some good ones, but Drew has made them look better, I feel. Lance Moore,
Sure.
would he have been good with another quarterback? So Brandon Cooks might be that great receiver. That's the missing ingredient. I feel like they could get him in the Super Bowl.
866-3200 is the phone number if you'd like to get involved in the conversation. We'll shift gears now to the LSU Tigers, ranked 13th in most polls. Glenn, we'll take you first on this. Your thoughts on this year's team? Again, a tough schedule. You've got unknowns at the quarterback position. You got a lot of young, skilled players that are coming in. Got a few injuries on the team right now going through camp. Much like the Saints, they keep those close to the vest. But overall, your thoughts?
Not as many mysterious injuries for LSU, which is a change compared to the Saints. But I think LSU has everything but quarterback right now. They're really good on defense in the secondary. They're good at linebacker. On paper, they don't look good at defensive tackle, but Les was saying yesterday they might be better because of some redshirt freshmen, Frank Herron and Macadius Bain, Greg Gilmore, and and Quentin Thomas is going to be back at defensive tackle. They're good at defensive end with Hunter and Roscoe. So, you know, the only problem is quarterback, and they went 13-0 when they had a quarterback problem in 2011. Right. So if they can get Brandon Harris and or Anthony Jennings just, you know, playing decent football, they could really have a chance to have a great season, because the offensive line might be the best in the SEC, and they've got very good running backs, Terrence McGee and the best running back in the country,
Garland?
Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, the only other concern I have is the receivers. Traven Durrell is your main guy, and he didn't have too many receptions last year.
The youth of the receiving corps?
Yeah, John Diarse, we haven't seen anything from Diarse yet. Malachi Dupree played at John Curtis. How tough is he in the SEC? That's going to be something to watch. And Trey Quinn. We know these were great receivers in pass-happy offenses. Well, Curtis is not a pass-happy offense, but Trey Quinn killed it at Barb. That's one of my major concerns with LSU as receiving corps, because we know they're going to run the ball. And Wisconsin's probably going to put, 8, 9 in a box. They're going to force them to give the ball to Kenny Hilliard, Terrence McGee, Darrell Williams, and Leonard Fournette. Maybe Connor Neighbors gets a 4th and 1 carry. They know that they're going to run the ball. I know Wisconsin's playing on it. They're going to force them to throw the ball, and who's going to be that guy that's going to step up and make the big play?
You know, I think that's a great point, and I was talking to someone about that recently. Knowing the inexperience at quarterback, Glenn, one of the things that SEC teams are going to do, what Wisconsin, as you mentioned, is going to do out the box. They're going to try to stop the run. They're going to put as many guys in the box as they can, and they're going to dare this team to throw the ball. But the scheme is a little bit different now, isn't it?
Well, yeah, they're doing the read option a little bit with Brandon Harris. Both quarterbacks can run a little bit, which you did not have with Mettenberger. But it is strange that they don't have experience at quarterback or receiver. Usually they have one or the other. I can't remember the last time they don't have much experience at either spot. But there is talent and speed at wide receiver. Malachi Dupree is very fast.
He's a little nicked up right now, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. And he's been missing a practice here and there, but it's nothing serious, Coach Miles said. And John Diarse has done very well this camp. Traven Durrell is the old man. He's just a sophomore. He's also very fast too. And the freshman out of Alexandria, Chark is his last name, and then Upchurch is very fast too. So they got what you need out there. And Brandon Harris is very good at the deep ball, unless, he's known as this Bo Schembechler guy, but he really likes the deep ball. He just hadn't had many good quarterbacks in his 10 years at LSU. So, that's going to be one option I think you see more than people might realize. They're going to do the deep ball with Brandon Harris. But if they win, if they win consistently and win 10 or 11 games or more, it's going to be because of the running game and defense.
Right. What about the quarterback position? What do you think happens there? Is it going to be throughout the season? We'll see a splitting of time of two quarterbacks. Will a quarterback overtake the other one for the starting position? What do you think happens between Harris and Jennings?
Anthony Jennings will get the opening start against Wisconsin. I think just on seniority alone. I know Les is huge about the older guy getting the start. They're both going to get a lot of reps in that first game against Wisconsin. I think the same thing in Sam Houston State, maybe in the ULM. You would hope by the Mississippi State game, the SEC opener, they have their quarterback chosen. But you know what? They might mix it up and have both of them. But I would hope that they would pick one. And right now, I know Glenn and I have talked about this. Neither one had a fantastic spring game. But Brandon Harris, the deep ball, I think he just has more zip on that ball right now than Anthony Jennings does.
He does throw a harder pass and with a lot more zip. And he's a little quicker than Jennings, scrambling and so forth. And Les loves when his quarterback can run a little bit, and he'll play him even when his quarterback can't run a little bit. but Harris, he can run, and I think eventually he's going to win the job too. But there might be a little back and forth in playing both of them through first quarter of the season.
There may not be a more highly touted running back coming out of high school than what? Herschel Walker was probably last guy, than Leonard Fournette. How do you think they utilize Fournette this year? Is it going to be running back by committee? Will we see maybe Terrence McGee and Hilliard in the beginning, and then slowly but surely we'll see Fournette with the majority of the carries? Again, they got a pretty deep stable of running backs.
I think.
They have Williams Rivera too, right?
Yeah, and Kenny Hilliard is still there. I think Terrence McGee will start the first game, and they'll work Fournette in. But I think as the season goes on, I think it's going to be less running back by committee and more Fournette. And we saw that with Jeremy Hill, really, the last 2 seasons. They did some of the committee, but by midseason or so, Hill was the guy, and he missed early part of the season the last 2 years. Fournette's not. So, and it really the season, the way LSU is built this year, it's just geared toward Fournette because they have freshmen at receiver and quarterback, and the strength is the offensive line, and hopefully defense. And so that sounds like a Michigan Les Miles game plan.
Fournette, you just can't. Cam Cameron said that he knew about the talent and all that, but he said he could just run all day. That was the one thing that Cam Cameron didn't know going into camp. He told me that on LSU Media Day, that he could just run forever. He's the fastest running back they have. I mean, the strongest running back they have. I mean, people have joked that Fournette could possibly, go out for the Saints right now. We'll see. He's got some work to do, but Fournette, I think halfway through the season, we'll probably get the most carries out of those guys. But Kenny Hilliard and Terrence McGee definitely, toward the beginning of the season, are getting a lot of work against Wisconsin.
Glenn, you saw him at the SEC Media Day. He's got an SEC body already, right?
Who's
Fournette?
Fournette. Well, no, he wasn't at SEC Media Day.
I'm sorry, at LSU Media Day.
Yeah, right. He does. And the thing that strikes you about him is he looks older than he is, and he carries himself as being older than he is. And what I find really interesting about him is LSU's had great running backs in the past, but few of them were the whole package. Falk was kind of small. Mm-hmm. Harvey Williams was tall and real fast, but he didn't go inside. Cecil Collins kind of had the whole package, mm-hmm. but he wasn't around long. Right. This guy is, like you said, he's as fast as any of those guys, but he's much bigger. He weighs 220, and he you wouldn't know it. And he's more like Charles Alexander than a lot of LSU's other running backs, but he's much faster than Alexander. He's not going to get the carries Charles Alexander got, but he's a guy that can dominate games, I think, and I think Les will eventually disregard the running back by committee.
Right. Anything you can add?
That running back core, it's like the Saints. I mean, they got some horses, and they're going to let them go this year. Now, they don't have a Drew Brees with the Saints. True. But they're going to get a lot of carries that first game. Right. That game should end in like 2.5 hours without commercial breaks, because Wisconsin's going to run the ball, LSU's going to run the ball. There's not going to be a lot of passing in Houston. But
it is a great test. I mean, if you had to open up a season, it is a pretty good test to open up against a team like Wisconsin.
Yeah, 3-point favorites in that game. That's a tight spread. LSU's not going to have another tough game until Auburn on the road. If they can get through Wisconsin, then I see them being 4-0 when they get to, 5-0 because they got New Mexico State before Auburn. If they beat Wisconsin, I think they're going to be 5-0 going to the Plains in early October.
What about the linebacker position?
Well, they keep trying to replace DJ Welter at middle linebacker with Kendall Beckwith, but I don't think it's going to happen. DJ started playing better last season, and he's kind of the whipping. He's the Shanley for Saint fans. Yeah. But he's good, and he's one of the leaders of the defense. I think he's going to stay there. I'm not sure what they're going to do with Beckwith, and then the other two outside linebackers, Lamar Lewis and Quan, are. They started to play very well last year. Last year, linebacker was supposed to be the strength, and they kind of struggled with knowing what the play was and being in the right set. But I have a feeling Chavis will get that fixed this year, and linebacker's a solid part of the team, but really the strength is the secondary.
Right. A lot of communication breakdowns last year.
Gosh.
No question.
I mean, we saw it over and over again.
Jalen Mills, I mean, the Georgia game, you just watch that game again. Jalen Mills, they had no idea what was going on. They were getting burned left and right by passes from Aaron Murray. That was a frustrating game to cover because just the defensive breakdowns were inexcusable in that game.
I would agree the secondary, especially with another year on these guys' belt, it looks like it is the strength of the team.
Yeah, and you got Rashard Robinson and Tre'Davious White at cornerback. that might be the best two corners they've had at the same time since Travis Daniels and Corey Webster, or maybe Matthew and Claiborne. But Matthew didn't play true corner a lot. He was always at the nickel. But those two guys, they can play man-to-man, and then that gives you a lot of options for Chavis as the coordinator. And the safeties are good. Look, remember the name Jamal Adams. He's a true freshman. He might start at strong safety over Ronald Martin, who's a senior, and Jalen Mills is moving right into free safety, which he probably maybe should have been there already in the Georgia game last year. But he was a pretty solid cornerback for most of his 2 years. But he's going to be very good at free safety, and they got some depth there in the secondary, much better than they had last year. And Chavis said on Sunday that he feels a lot better at this point this year than he did at this point last year.
That safety core, I tell you one thing, if Ronald Martin does get beaten out, boy, Ronald Martin had a lot of hype going in there, and his stars fizzled fast. I like Jordan Jefferson's little brother, too, playing safety.
Ricky?
Yeah, Ricky's another good option at safety. But the defensive line, the linebackers, safety, anything can be better than last year.
Yeah.
That defense last year got shredded up and down.
Just
Alabama
really underachieved, huh?
Yeah, and that's unlike a John Chavis defense. I mean, Freak Johnson, I covered him in high school. I'm still disappointed how it all turned out for him. I mean, the potential was there for Anthony Johnson to have a great career at LSU, and it fizzled fast.
The LSU's 13th in most of the polls. A lot of people are saying the floor on the Tigers' season, 9 wins. Guys, what do you think? Glenn, I'll take you first. How many wins do you think this team gets? Are they going to be in the mix for the new Final Four championship?
I don't think they're going to quite be in the mix for that. I got them at 10-3. If Cameron can work a miracle and get a freshman at LSU to play great at quarterback for the first time since Tommy Hodson in 1986, then they could win 12 games and be in that mix. But I just don't think that's going to quite happen. I think they'll be close, and 10-3 is my pick.
Yeah, I think the Auburn game they lose. I think Auburn, that's going to be a tough matchup for LSU on the road. That's going to be their first road test. This is neutral for Wisconsin. Florida, watch out for them. Jeff Driscoll, disappointing year last year at 4-8. I don't know if they get out of that one, and then Alabama at home. I got them at 9-3. Just tough games. Florida 2 years ago on the road, that was a really tough one. Then that was when Minter had over 20 tackles, one of the best performances I ever witnessed in my life.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to run the same problems. Auburn and Florida back-to-back weeks. They could lose both of those, and then Alabama at home.
Well, we're finding out more about the Tulane Green Wave as they get ready to get into the American Athletic Conference. They've been picked 9th by the coaches in that conference. Everybody's excited about the ability to be able to move back to campus. That's exciting. The stadium is almost complete. We found out this week Tanner Lee's going to be the quarterback. Talk a little bit about Tanner Lee. Talk about this program moving in with this redshirt freshman. He seems to be the guy that is going to at least get the opportunity at the outset to be the guy to lead this team. What do you think about Tulane?
I think Tanner Lee is going to become a legend at Tulane. I think it's being a local kid. This year they're going to struggle, though. Their non-conference games are against Rutgers, Duke, on the road both. Georgia Tech comes in the home opener, and Southeastern. I don't see an easy game on that schedule. Southeastern is number 3 in the FCS, and right now they have the best quarterback in the state, in Brian Bennett, who transferred out of Oregon after Marcus Mariota beat him out. Right now, he is the best quarterback in the state. Tanner Lee this year is going to get some bumps, but I don't expect Tulane to make a bowl this year. I think they're going to go 5-7. They're going to go backwards this year. The schedule was extremely weak last year. That's why I thought they were going to make it to a bowl game last year in the preseason. That's what I predicted, and sure enough, they did. This year, they're going to have some major growing pains, and I just think that Tanner Lee going forward, this is the right move to start him now because his sophomore, junior year, this is when Tulane's going to get up in the double-digit wins with Tanner Lee at quarterback. I just don't think Devin Powell's the answer. Nick Montana, he had his 1 year. He's looked actually better this camp, but I just think Tanner Lee it was the right decision. If you go to one practice, you can tell that Tanner Lee is the best quarterback. The zip on his passes, it's up there with Brandon Harris. He has a cannon for an arm.
Well, one of the things that we've been able to see, Glenn, from CJ is one thing he's been able to do is he's been able to recruit South Louisiana. He's getting the better athletes than I've ever seen in my time, again, watching Tulane football. Again, whether those guys make a difference this year or not is unknown, but the talent level has definitely been raised.
Well, and there's no reason for Tulane to go that far outside of New Orleans to recruit, because there's enough players in the state after LSU gets its players, and LSU's still getting all kind of players from out of state, so it's not like they're just recruiting Louisiana. ULL has done very well getting in-state players, so that's the way for Curtis to do it.
Yeah, and again, it's kind of an arms race. You got Southeastern, who's again recruiting very well. You mentioned ULL, obviously LSU, and then of course you're going to have some of the big boys coming in Louisiana trying to grab some of those players as well.
Yeah, Tanner Lee went to Jesuit. Lorenzo Doss, cornerback, went to St. Aug. Darian Monroe, one of their star guys in the secondary, went to East St. John, and their number one recruit is Teddy Veal out of West Jeff.
Right.
The other day I went to practice. They told me 70 kids from the state of Louisiana on this roster. They can't recall it being that number since maybe when Tulane was in the SEC back in the 40s and 50s. Curtis Johnson is trying to put a fence around Louisiana. If LSU doesn't get him, he wants to get him. You got a new stadium, a new conference. I like the new scheme they did with the colors on the Tulane on their logo. I think there's big things going to happen for Tulane, not this year, but in the coming years.
Strength of the team this year.
Well, running game, if Dante Butler can stay healthy, could be a strength. But the offensive line is got a lot of work. The number one spot is secondary. Last year with Lorenzo Dawson, Darian Monroe, those are the guys they're gonna turn around, get some turnovers. Bob Marley's grandson Nico at linebacker started as a freshman. I think the back end, the linebackers and the safety are going to be a strength for them. But just this year, if you're a Tulane fan, don't go all in this year at all. I really think that they're going to step backwards, but in the coming years, get really excited about them.
Biggest question mark?
The offensive line protecting Tanner Lee. It's his first year. I know he looks good in practice, but Tanner's going to have some major growing pains this year.
Someone mentioned the kicking game as well.
Whew. Kicking game is bad. I'm not going to lie. I've only been to one practice. They were missing extra points.
That's not good.
Cairo Santos, where are you? I know you're in Kansas City. I think I tweeted out on Tuesday, it is a major work in progress. Expect them to go a lot on fourth downs this year.
Hope and try. You need to hope and try.
If you can't hit extra points in college football, a 20-yard field goal, you got trouble. They have a walk-on and a freshman on scholarship. That race, right now, it's survival of the least right now. Neither one of them are that good.
Ceiling for Tulane's in terms of wins and loss this year.
If they can get to 6, that is going to be a better job than Curtis did last year. With that schedule, joining a new conference, I mean, they're picked second to last.
Yeah.
The team that's in last is Tulsa in their opener, and that's a tough road game to start out. If they get 6 wins, if you're a Tulane fan, you're jumping up and down because I think it's going to be really tough to get there.
Glenn, your thoughts?
I'm not familiar with Tulane.
I like the honesty there.
No.
But going forward,
but 6 wins gets them into a bowl game. If you can do that. But I would agree with you. I think it's going to be difficult.
This isn't the Chris Selfo days, the Buddy Tevens days, the Bob Toledo's
You're
days.
in a tough conference.
They're gonna sell it out for the opener against Georgia Tech. They might get a win that we didn't expect, like at Georgia Tech. But going forward, Tulane could really do some damage in the AAC.
Well, especially now with the youth that they have.
LSU and Tulane each starting redshirt freshman, or each could start freshman quarterback. True freshman quarterback. No, he's a
Tanner. They held out last year.
Okay, but that's rare.
Well, we're out of time, guys. Thanks so much, Garland Gillen of Fox 8 Sports and Glenn Guilbeau of Gannett News. Also, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this show each and every Friday night right here on WLAE TV, and also Pelican Sports Television in New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette. You can also catch me on the radio weekdays, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. on WGSO 990 AM. And, of course, you can always follow me on Twitter at Eric_Asher. If you missed any of the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports, or you want to catch my radio show or my podcast, you can do that at ericasher.com. And, of course, special thanks to our production staff here at WLAE, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and my director, William Hill. For Garland Gillen and Glenn Guilbeau, my name is Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching Inside New Orleans Sports. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night. Good evening.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation, Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home, and Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House.